Welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Bud Elliott. That's Danny Cannell. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate. Rocking and rolling here on a Wednesday, and lots to get to. So we've got a few sort of position coach movements. We got some transfer portal buzz, especially as it pertains to the future of the Jed Fish era at Washington. Bud's back, so we got to find out what the deal is with Tennessee's new 5-star quarterback commitment. The big topic that we've got coming up in just a little bit was just an opportunity for us to have our own version of Myth Busters. No copyright space or no space, whatever we need to, be in. This is parody. That's right. Fair use. Anyway, we're going to take, for a focus on NIL, transfer portal, just basically take some of the common notions, such as, is it possible to spend $13 million on a portal haul? Does the math even math like that? We'll get into all that in a little bit, but we want to begin with something that's bubbling sort of right in front of our faces. Feel like it could happen at any minute. And I apologize, gentlemen, because I was the one who cried wolf yesterday. Okay. I lit the Harbaugh warnings. Okay. I didn't put the sirens out there, but I at least had the warnings going, as reports from NFL Network indicated that the phrase was striking distance. The Chargers were in striking distance of landing a deal with Harbaugh. Our own Dennis Dodd, comes forth with more reporting about what the negotiations with Michigan are like, and they do seem to be ongoing. Danny, what is your latest read on Jim Harbaugh and where he will be coaching in 2024?
I was on HQ set, and we were doing a 1 o'clock. This is yesterday, 1 o'clock. We're doing NFL Conference Championship weekend preview. So we do that, and then our guy Jack, our producer, gets in my ear, and he says, stick around. We're doing Harbaugh. And I was like, ooh, is this the news? And then I think I even texted you guys like, hey, if there's breaking news, I'm here. We'll be ready. We'll work around it. I mean, it sure felt like it was done, striking distance. Like you said, I started to buy in. There was even reports that Jesse Minter might go with him. There's an offer on the table from Michigan. There was front office discussions that made. I just wonder if all these people don't realize who they're dealing with. And I think Jim Harbaugh is very unique. And I think of all these things that get right there and it feels like you're there, Jim Harbaugh might at the last second be like, you know what? I like being a Michigan man. It wouldn't surprise me at all. So I'll go back to what I've maintained since day one. Nothing will surprise me. Like if he comes back to Michigan, I won't be shocked. If he's announced within an hour after our show that he's the head coach of the Chargers, I won't be shocked. If it's the Falcons, wouldn't be shocked. Like nothing will surprise me. I'll say this though. I do think we should wait to do anything until he's at the podium, like in the Chargers gear with the bolts and like, hey, here you go. Because I don't think anybody has a real feel for what he's going to do, but it does feel like it's imminent.
What I appreciate about Jim Harbaugh, and I think he's the perfect test case for this, is the way he exposes the stupidity of the industry. Like, what was the phrase, Chip, that they were reporting yesterday?
Striking distance.
Within striking distance. What, like, with coaching searches this offseason, why did everybody go Woj at the draft all of a sudden? Like, it used to be in the NBA draft because ESPN and the NBA asked them not to spoil the picks. Adrian Wojnarowski would, tweet, this team is zeroing in on this player, which was just code for this is who they're going to draft. Why do we have to do that with coaching searches? Why is it like every report about a coach now is Duke is zeroing in on this person? They are targeting. Are they hiring them or not? And
so,
okay, go ahead.
This has happened for a couple years in a row, and I think it's because of the want for guys who report coaching search stuff to get out more content. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like 5-6 years ago, it was like, okay, what can we really report? And there was a lot of stuff we knew. And then the editor would be like, well, if it's not official, like we shouldn't report it. I'm like, no, bullshit. Like, hey, if we know like this is who they're really going after, that's a news item. Okay. It may not actually happen, but like if your sources are telling you it's close, throw it out there. And I think the language that the reporters now, like a Thamel or whoever else, what they couch it in is really kind of brilliant from a content creation standpoint.
But that's the thing. It's creating content. It's not reporting.
Right.
Like, if you're confident that this is happening, say they're going to hire him.
And
Don't
this is
say they're in
also
striking distance or they're zeroing in on them, because that's bullshit. That's the bullshit.
Maybe
that is
that-
just
but
creating content for the day for your NFL Plus network show to get people to tune in to watch, so you can say they're within striking distance. It's like they've been within striking distance of it for a month now, because we've known he's interviewed for the job and we know he's coming back for a second interview. So saying they're within striking distance doesn't mean anything. It's just pay attention to us for 5 minutes. That's all this is. We need something to talk about today.
Trying to think if I disagree with this or not. I sort of do, because if he goes back for the second interview, clearly like they like him some, reporting that it is within striking distance is letting the audience know that things are progressing past just the second interview. Like he's probably seen as the lead candidate. They are working, towards a deal, right? Like you're not working towards a deal with multiple guys, probably. Like you're probably going to work one at a time until you see if it happens or not. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no,
But
I get it.
It used to be.
It's also a way to
it's
be
soft.
first. But if you're wrong, you could say, well, I never said it.
Yes.
Like that to me is where I have a problem with it, because you can claim afterwards, hey, I was the one who reported it. But if it doesn't go, then you'll be like, I never said it was done. I said it was striking distance. It was them that backed out. I think it's like a lot of things in our society today, just journalistically, like the standard has been lowered.
Yes.
Which, I mean, I think that's what this is. There's blurred lines between what is reporting it and what is not.
it's also all
Reported or
coming
don't.
from the NFL side. All of the information that we are referencing
Yes.
are NFL-based reports.
Yes.
So as I mentioned in the group chat, my spidey sense is that the Chargers would love to introduce Jim Harbaugh. And the Chargers would love to be able to get the headlines out there that we're in striking distance. Don't y'all worry. We're going to show you. We're going to land him. While we don't have any of our trusted voices on the college side coming out here with this like long list of all these details. So one side in these negotiations is springing a bunch of leaks. And the other side, as Danny mentioned, we cannot trust until there's a podium out there. Like until there is a release from Michigan saying like, we thank Jim Harbaugh for everything he's done and we wish him well. And either, that's in the decision tree, we're going to promote Sharon Moore, or famous words, a national search will begin immediately. Like until we hear that official release, then yeah, it's definitely going to be hard for us on the college side to feel like we've got the inside. A lot of this feels like it's coming from the Chargers. Again, it felt imminent yesterday and the entire day came and went. I got the text like, what's your availability tonight? I told him from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. If it pops, I can jump on. I mean, the HQ research department pulled all of its information together. We were on the cusp of hitting the sirens, but it didn't happen. And could it happen today? Sure.
And
But it
that's what
might
you
also
should be
might
doing.
not.
Behind the scenes, you should be getting ready for it. On the camera, you don't need to just say crap just to say crap, but that's what we do.
Well, we do, but that's because we are an entertainment product, a well-informed entertainment product.
Yes, this show is an entertainment product. Reporting isn't entertainment.
Correct.
But that
Reporting is
line has
sharing
been blurred.
information. Yeah,
That line has
exactly.
been blurred for a long time now. It's been,
Mhm. And it just pisses me off.
Should.
By the way, I know Tom knows, but do you know that Ward Manuel was trending today?
No.
Do you know why they were trending today? Because Michigan fans are seeing their head coach, who just led them to 3 straight Big Ten titles and a national championship, out here floating in the wind, not committing to this supposed $125 million offer. While also your men's basketball team. Tom, what happened last night with the Wolverines? Oh, they got shellacked 99-67. They have fallen to 7-12 overall, 2-6 in Big Ten play. And so a Michigan fan is sitting there watching Jim Harbaugh maybe go to the NFL, and Juwan Howard just leading this program to the worst conference record in the Big Ten.
At least he didn't hit anybody, though.
This time, we already had the strength coach, issue from earlier this year. It is a wild. I do not envy the position of Michigan's administration right now, unless Jim Harbaugh does put his name on that dotted line.
And the reports out there, like if you were looking for a reason why Harbaugh wouldn't come back, if you believe the stuff that they don't talk, that this relationship is beyond repair, that there's this, dissension, then if you're looking for a reason, and you don't want to believe that Harbaugh wanted to chase NFL dreams and, aspirations, maybe it is because of Ward Manuel. So he's clearly going to take some brunt of the criticism.
Will say, if you're going to fight like a coach on your staff, why is the strength coach the guy you're choosing? That should be the last guy on the power rankings of my coaching staff that I'm trying to fight. Strength coach is dead last.
Dennis Dodd again. I'll say he's got a good story on CBSSports.com right now about some of the negotiations on the college side. Harbaugh, Michigan, trying to figure out what sort of provisions would be in that contract that would keep him from getting fired for cause if there are any significant penalties from the multiple NCAA investigations. All right, let's rock through a few other headlines right here. The first one is LSU has its new offensive coordinator, and it is someone who is already on staff. Quarterbacks coach Joe Sloan has been promoted to offensive coordinator. We also have Cortez Hankerton gets a co-OC title as well. Bud, what do you make of this decision right here? I know that you had mentioned Joe Sloan as somebody to keep an eye on. Good opportunity for him. What does it say about your expectations for LSU's offense as it goes into 2024?
I think LSU's offense is going to continue absolutely killing it. I mean, Joe Sloan's done a nice job with the quarterbacks there. Jaden Daniels, I know he was throwing to two, according to the latest mock drafts, 2 first-round receivers and probably 2 pretty high NFL draft picks there blocking for him at the tackle spots. But I think Joe Sloan did a nice job with Jaden Daniels helping him out, and that just makes sense to promote him. And I think if you didn't promote him, you probably could have lost him to another school, right? So if you got a guy who's a commodity like that, not only in the coaching, but in the recruiting side, it kind of makes sense to trust him. And Brian Kelly's an offensive guy too, so I'm sure he's still going to have his hands on the offense. But I think it's probably a good hire. Look, my only real concern with LSU is their lack of use and success in the transfer portal on defense. As of now, it looks like LSU is just going to run it back with the defensive roster they have. And I think that's an answer. I think that's really a recipe to get run out of the building again, like they did. I mean, I don't trust the corners they have on the roster. I don't really trust what they have along the defensive line. They've lost a couple guys to the draft early. They got Bo Davis, and that's great for the future. But if LSU doesn't do something in the spring transfer window to address the defensive side of the ball in the portal, I have a hard time thinking that they're going to be that good of a team.
Hankton, by the way.
Maybe they like their guys a lot better.
Yeah, my apologies to Cortez. Hankton, not Hankerton. My fault. Any other, Tom?
My favorite, I saw like a conspiracy theory about this from fans. Brian Kelly's promoting internally because he doesn't want to take the actual OC he wants, because he wants to make sure he's still available for when he leaves to take the Michigan job. That's the message board conspiracy going on around here right now. So, no, I think it makes sense. I think promoting from within, considering how well that offense did last year, makes all the sense in the world. And I'm kind of with Bud. It's the defense on that team that has me concerned going into next year, not who their offensive coordinator is.
They do have to replace a quarterback who played, Heisman Trophy level play all season long. I think the continuity is good, but I'm more curious to see is what does the next guy look like in that system?
Not to mention their top 2 receivers.
Right.
Coming up on the other side, we jump on into the transfer portal, some recruiting headlines, and we'll start busting some myths next.
The biggest event in sports is coming to the entertainment capital of the world. CBS Sports HQ will have you covered every minute leading up to Super Bowl 58.
CBS Sports HQ at the Super Bowl,
getting you set with all the critical analysis you need.
This league is decided by quarterbacks.
He showed a lot of character in that moment.
great perspective, Josina.
It's the moment you've been waiting for all season long. Ready, set, Vegas.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, Will Rogers entered the transfer portal after Kalen DeBoer made the move to Alabama. We remember Austin Mack, followed Kalen DeBoer to Alabama. Will Rogers is not. He is going to be back with the Huskies. Also, Washington coach Jed Fish goes back to Arizona, adds running back Jonah Coleman here. Danny, when you see Will Rogers being able to stick there, Noah Fafita stuck with stuck with Arizona. McMillan stuck with Arizona. Do you foresee this being a move that helps Washington in terms of their outlook for 2024?
Yeah, from stability, from experience, from leadership, absolutely. But I was thinking about this from Will Rogers' standpoint, right? Like he went to Washington thinking he's going to be handed the job. Then he probably, he was there on the sidelines, watching guys warm up. He sees Austin Mack, and the dude's got a cannon, 6'6", like he's got all the skill set that he's looking for. Then you bring your coach leaves, your offensive coordinator that you signed up to go play for, and you're thinking maybe he's going to bring Noah Fafita with him. And you're thinking, holy cow, this is an entire different situation than what I bargained for. But then all of a sudden, Austin Mack leaves. He goes to Tuscaloosa. Fafita stays. And you're thinking, oh, okay, maybe this is a great opportunity for me to play. So I think from a leadership standpoint, from experience, the dude's played a lot of football. I'll be curious to see kind of what the system looks like that he's in. But I think it's a good thing. Like it was the first, I wouldn't say the first, but it's a good news story for Washington to be able to have a guy like this that brings some stability in which a roster has been devastated. I also have concerns about the guys he's going to be playing with, but I think it's a good option to have and probably most likely their day one starter.
Fine with it. Like, I don't think Will Rogers is anything special, but at least he brings some stability to that program. Washington is losing almost every starter that just played in the national title game. There was a scenario in which I think they could have been good this upcoming year, and I don't want to write them off because we don't know what will happen in the spring portal window. But I don't think they're like a top 25 level team now with everything they've lost. I think Will Rogers helps Washington feel fairly comfortable that they're going to make a bowl still, pending what they do in the spring. Given that the schedule is pretty tough, they do enter the Big Ten, which is, I think, going to be tougher than most years of the Pac-12. Last year's Pac-12, to be fair, was pretty tough, and Washington had the worst of it. At least, Washington had one of the tougher schedules in the Pac-12 this year in terms of who they missed and who they didn't miss. So it helps bring some stability to Washington. I don't think he's anything special, but it doesn't. He's not an unknown.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to any of that. He's not Michael Penix, but like you guys have both touched on, and we talked about a little bit on Monday, like one of the things with Michael Penix is they've been around so long that there's really nothing you could throw at them that they haven't seen. So if you're Will Rogers, you don't have the arm talent Michael Penix does. You're not going to be running the same offense Michael Penix ran. You won't have the same weapons available to you, but you've seen enough that we can put an offense around you, send you out there and be confident that you're not going to actively hurt us and you could help us. So I think that kind of experience will certainly help this transition for them in the first year of a new coaching staff after losing so much. And that, I think, a steadying force is important to have with all the change going on in that program.
Yeah, 38 career starts.
Mm-hmm.
That ain't nothing.
No.
Like obviously the numbers, 1,301 completions. That was all at Mississippi State, and that ranks as the most in SEC history. He is currently top 40 in the career passing yards in NCAA history. So depending on how things go, he will likely be climbing that and finish, who knows where, depending on health and everything else. But Tom, I think you've got it dialed. It is not wild. Because there was another quarterback who we questioned sort of whether a move would be good for them leaving the SEC. And now, granted, Washington's going to the Big Ten now. But could Will Rogers have a Bo Nix-like resurgence here? Could he connect with? And by the way, another thing that he said was Jed Fish's NFL experience was a big part of this. He knows that right now he is not high on anybody's board. But Bo Nix wasn't high on anybody's board either until all of a sudden you get in there. So I think this is an opportunity for Rodgers, and obviously great for Washington to be able to have a quarterback with so much experience to hold things down offensively for the Huskies.
Yeah. Yes, he can take a step forward. He can improve. He can get better. I think that he is more of he has to be within the structure from, what I've seen of him at Mississippi State. It has to be within the structure of the play for him to really have success. He's not somebody that does well when things break down. So if you put him in that kind of system, and I think there are also NFL teams that Their entire offense is based very similar to those kind of principles. Like if you look at a lot of the Kyle Shanahan teams, it's a lot of anticipation and structure. Like those are the kind of quarterbacks they look for. Will Rogers is the kind of guy who could fit in that. It's just, does he have the zip and the overall arm strength that you need to compete at the next level? I don't know if Jetfish can give him that.
That's true. From the recruiting trail, a story that I believe broke on Monday morning. 5-star quarterback George McIntyre, this is from the 25 cycle, commits to Tennessee. Another 5-star quarterback, the heir apparent to Nico if the commitment holds. We mentioned it on Monday's show, but we weren't going to feign or fake our way through a profile, not without Bud here. So, Bud, what do we see in McIntyre? What kind of player is this for the Vols?
So I think Tennessee fans should be really excited here because you're getting one of the more. Here you go. I think Tennessee's getting one of the more toolsy quarterbacks in the class. We have him as one of the top rated quarterbacks so far. Again, want to see guys play their senior seasons. For quarterbacks, we really do value that quite a bit. We want to see that progression. We want to see you at Elite 11. I want to see you in challenging situations. And can you make quick decisions and all the kind of stuff that we'll do out there with them. But I kind of see McIntyre as a cross between like a Riley Leonard and a Drew Lock. Okay. So think like taller, basketball background, athletic, but not like a crazy burner. Drew Lock ran 4.69 at the combine. Like he's actually, Drew Lock was a decent shooting guard prospect. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but that was, I saw him at Chicago Elite 11 in 2014 or 15. We did it at the Bears facility that year. It was indoors, but like big time arm, needs to learn more touch and anticipation, I think, which will be interesting. Very toolsy. McIntyre's like 6'5". I think he has the frame to add more weight, but that's kind of what I see him as, like a bit of like a Riley Leonard, Drew Lock cross. Big arm, want to see more touch anticipation. I think he's got the real mobility to be somebody who can be a threat as a runner, but not somebody you're like, I need this guy to run it 10 times a game in college. So I think if you're a Tennessee fan, you're pretty excited about this.
Is that? Go ahead. Is the quarterback room sort of set up like this is the way it's going to go? Nico takes over in 24, holds it down for 25, and then you hope McIntyre's ready to go in 26?
I think so, because the kid they grabbed this year is not toolsy, right? Mm-hmm. He's more like accurate anticipation. Jake Merklinger, who I saw at the Elite 11 Orlando Regional, he's out of Savannah, but not a massive arm, but a guy just kind of clean stroke, consistent, anticipatory. It's a different type of skill set than what a Nico has or what a McIntyre has. McIntyre, by the way, is also the nephew of Mike McIntyre, who's the coach at FIU. He was the coach at Colorado. So, been around football all his life. I believe his grandfather also played for Vanderbilt. So a pretty intriguing prospect that I'm excited to see.
I have never seen this kid do anything. So
same.
I've never seen him put on socks. I have no idea what he's good. My question is, does the name concern you at all? Like, does George McIntyre strike you as a good quarterback name? Because I'm going through my brain of trying to think of like who was boo me all you want. I don't care. I'm asking questions that matter. Like Jeff George, but that wasn't his first name. His name was Jeff. And then like George Blanda is really the only QB I could think of who was ever named George. So like, I just feel like there's a very low hit rate on Georges at QB. So from that aspect, this kid's going to end up playing at like, I don't know, maybe he'll join his uncle at FIU.
I will say there are some interesting names coming up. So like, is George a typical name that we see for George McIntyre for quarterback? Not really. Bro, there's a Dashton.
See, that's not a cool QB name.
Didn't you just
Dashton on my son's T-ball team. I'm like,
oh, wasn't there a player I just saw that was a Dash?
There's like 3 different spellings of Braden.
Yeah, see, these are QB names. These are like, look at, there comes Dashton. Oh boy, he's the cool kid in school. George has never been the cool kid in school. George is George Costanza. He's the dork.
Yeah, Dash Beerley.
George.
Dash Beerley decommitted from Arizona to go to Washington.
See, Dash.
Just saw that post the other day.
Name.
Is Dash short for Dashton? Have you guys ever heard the name Dashton?
No, this is a first.
That's me too. Yeah, and like I see all these rosters for all these camps and combines, and there's a lot of names like that's the first time I've ever seen that name, or that's the first time I've ever seen that name spelled that way.
Well, I mean, we're in Air Noland era. So I mean, we're obviously like we've jumped the shark on that one.
You go I just
George
Googled
McIntyre
it.
actually George McIntyre finished T6 at the Open Championship at Royal Portrush. You know,
look at that.
If our window I think is closed. I keep trying to slip one past the goalie, but my wife is not having it. If we had a boy, first one would be Danny. Second one, Cannon.
Oh, see, that's a quarterback right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cannon Cannell.
Cannon Cannell. Oh my God.
Auto
Number
4
one
star
overall
pick.
pick,
We're going to consider
done.
the 5.
I'm retiring off that kid all day long, but I don't know if it's ever going to happen.
Cannon Cannell. CK.
Cannon is a great name.
Yeah.
I can already tell you Cannon Cannell is Pete Prisco's favorite QB in this year's draft.
He's got the fire in the belly.
He's 6'4" and he's got
Tony
a huge
is
arm. He's the
100%
best one.
right. Tony is 100% right.
Tony Sandy in the Cover 3 tailgate says George McIntyre does my taxes.
Yep.
All right. You know how like you can Google like what certain names mean, which is probably all BS anyway. Results return 0 for Ashton. So that's a made up name.
What does it say for air?
For air.
Yes,
Nolan. Don't name him Tate. That's a great call. If you want your son to be a quarterback, I don't know if we've seen it. We've seen a lot of Tates get high recruiting ratings.
Ooh,
I don't know if we've seen. I mean, we're like 0 for 4, right?
Forcier?
Yeah, I was going Forcier, Martell. You know, like there's Tate. You got to stick to whatever that full name is. I'm or at least like choose the middle name. Tate's not going to get you there when it comes to being that 5-star. No, excuse me. When it comes to having that 5-star rating pan out on the other side of a college.
One
college
kept you out of the playoffs too.
yeah.
I would apologize to any Georges listening, but they know. Like every George that's listening right now is like, yeah, no, I couldn't be a quarterback.
No, but listen, I trust George to hold down right guard.
Yeah. George could play tight end. He could be an all-pro tight end.
Yeah.
I don't know if George can be a wide receiver. You know, it's a little bit of a roller coaster ride with those Georges.
George Pickens. Yeah,
Pickens was kind of what I'm thinking about right now.
It's like, you know, as long as everything's going great, you could play wide receiver named George. But the second something goes wrong, he's going to remove your name from his Instagram profile.
Oh, Rodemaker. That's another
That's
tape.
why I said kept you out of the playoffs. That's almost like it's a jinx. Maybe it's just the name. It wasn't his fault.
That's not his fault. All right. So there was a rumor that was bubbling around on the internet, and it reached the point that a sitting SEC coach decided that he would share it on Twitter. It's the rumor that Ohio State spent $13 million on its transfer portal haul. We don't think that's right. In fact, we're almost positive that's not right. And it led to a lot of other conversations with fans about what is and isn't true about the hearsay around NIL and the transfer portal. So we're going to do a little bit of myth busting next. So today is January the 24th, which means that there are 4 days left for you to go and vote for us, the Cover 3 podcast, in the Best American Football Podcast category in the Sports Podcast Awards. We've been a finalist before, but we want to win it this time, and we need your help to do that. So scan the QR code that's on the screen right now if you're watching on YouTube. In the episode description, we will put the link for you to go and vote. And the whole process of voting only takes about 30 seconds. Thank you so much. Every single time we've been mentioning it on the show, you know, we get the response from the Cover 3 tailgate. Voted just now. Already voted. We love it. We love to see all of y'all support. Y'all have helped us get to this place that we are a 2-time finalist in the Best American Football Podcast category. But this time, we want to bring home the hardware. You can help us with that. Again, in the episode description, either on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, we'll have a link. There's a QR code on the screen right now as well. All right, let's do a little. And if this goes well, we'll keep doing it all through over the next couple months. Find popular misconceptions and break them down with a little myth buster here. So, Bud, pretty dialed in on the player personnel side of things. 13 mil for a transfer portal haul? How's that work? Math ain't mathing for that.
It doesn't. Like if Ohio State is spending $13 million on its transfer portal class, Ohio State's doing like some serious money laundering. Okay. Like this is just not a thing that is. So I did a little exercise. Like what is the absolute highest number for each of these transfer portal players that I could see somebody who is like not on mushrooms paying? And I looked at it. All right, let's just go with like the highest that's been rumored out there, and then we'll sum it all up. Okay. So Caleb Downs, $2 million a year. Now, do I believe Caleb Downs is getting $2 million a year? I don't. Do I think he's like one of the best college safeties since Micah Fitzpatrick and like a Derwin James? Yeah, I do. Like clearly, he's an absolute stud. But I don't really buy that $2 million number. I guess in theory, it's feasible, but still, I feel like that's incredibly high. But let's just go for it. For the sake of argument, fine, whatever. All right, Will Howard. I think the top quarterback this year probably got slightly over 1.5 because that's kind of where I think the negotiations were at when, Ward was playing around with going to the NFL. So maybe there a little bit more got thrown at him to decide hey, you want to play college football or not?
So we're at
Let's just
3.5.
call Will Howard $1 million.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. You're not even going to give him 1.5 with the borderline mushrooms.
Right. I'm going to give him $1 million. The center from Alabama who couldn't snap the ball, even if you're moving him to guard, maybe 300. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Julian's saying we know what some of like the absolute best 5-star quarterbacks have got because the Tennessee contract got leaked with Nico. Saying is not a Nico level talent. Now he may be a better player long term, but on measurables and talent, not. I gave him $1 million.
Huge head.
All right.
Because technically he's a transfer because he signed with Alabama. He was on campus for like a couple days and then he transferred. And then Quinshad Judkins, I don't think there's no way they paid him $1 million when they already have Travion Henderson on the roster, right? So I gave him 800.
Okay, so if you've got that, I've got you at 5.1. That was an extremely aggressive because the other funny thing of this, and like the starting point, is that there are only 6 players in this transfer portal class.
Right.
See,
well,
like,
are one kid's going to get 0 NIL.
Yeah. Are you going to tell me that? So like last year, Colorado had 50 transfer portal players. They weren't all, of that level. But if you wanted to run up a big number, you got to get like 23, 24. Which, by the way, is usually what Ole Miss is hitting in terms of their transfer portal classes. You've got to get double digits all the way up. You're not going to get it done at 6. 5.1 is where you're at right now, and I still think it's probably less than that.
Yeah, if you gave me the over-under of $5 million for how much Ohio State spent on its transfer portal class, I'm taking the under. If you gave me 13, I'm taking the under for like my house, Danny's house, everybody's house. Because like Ohio State did not spend $13 million this year on their transfer. I know enough guys in the collective NIL space to know, I don't know exactly what a guy gets always, but I know what they don't get. Okay. And they did not get $13 million. Like that is just not a thing. Now for their overall NIL payroll, I think 13 could be a little bit high, but I buy it. Because they
the guys that they convinced to stay. Yeah.
Yeah. They also had some big battles to fight down the stretch. Jeremiah Smith, number 1 player in the entire country out of high school. They also kept the defensive lineman Houston. My guess is those guys weren't cheap. Okay. If Jeremiah is getting $1 million or something, I kind of buy that because I think he's a guy who's going to play for them immediately, and potentially the ceiling is about as high as any receiver we've ever seen. So yeah. $13 million for their entire roster this year because of how many guys they kept from going to the draft who probably made good decisions to come back. Let's be real. I do kind of buy that. And that to me would be one of the higher numbers in college football. 13. Like, I don't think there's very many teams that are over 10.
Doesn't this seem a little sliced breadish?
The 13 for the transfer class for sure. The 13 for the entire roster, I don't think is totally insane.
That was an incredible reference, Danny. We haven't heard sliced bread in a long time, but
right. And he had the accusation that Jimbo spent $30 million on the 2022 class or 21. I forget what class it was. But to me, kind of the tie-in with it is like that story was a fabrication by a Twitter troll. This report that's out there, doesn't it feel awful fishy that it's the exact number that Ryan Day gave 2 years ago when he was like, "Hey, we need 13 million." And that's where I would say it comes into the, like, if you had a salary cap or a salary budget, the 13 million makes a whole lot more sense.
Completely. Yeah. I the only reason we really wanted to tackle this is like enough of our everyday listeners and viewers who we think are a pretty sharp crowd. Like they correct us on stuff. We love interacting with the tailgate. They were like seriously asking about this in the chat and on Twitter. Like, come on, guys, 13 million for a transfer class is, especially a 5-man transfer. Well, I guess they have 6, but the one guy's not going to
already
get
enrolled.
Yeah. Yeah, they're that's not happening. So,
but I don't believe that for Danny's reason, I don't believe the 13 as the number, but I believe 13 is the ballpark.
Yes.
Sure.
I believe that when you've got Denzel Burke, JTT, Sawyer, Tyleek Williams, Trevion Henderson, and not that Trevion Henderson is going to command a lot, but I would assume Emeka Ibuka is another one that you got to remember. Again, not that he had a ton of leverage coming to the table, but if you're Ohio State and you are, as we have said, loading up intentionally in a way to attack 2024, then yeah, you're going to make sure that you take care of your guys. You make sure that they are going to be able to, have a competitive number to be able to stick with your team, make sure the roster is locked and loaded.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure.
Bud may be able to handle this. SMU made waves when they said we're going to play every player. We're going to pay every player. I think it was 35 grand was the number. Like they were all going to get it. And we all thought like that was a mismanagement, misuse of their funding. Go out and get the big name players and screw the guys that aren't playing right. Like, why are you having to pay everybody? At a place like Ohio State, at a place like Georgia, maybe Florida State, maybe a lot of big schools, is there, of 85 scholarships, are all 85 getting something? Is there, like, because Texas famously
education
had the Pancake Factory. Yes, they are getting an education, Tom. Thanks for reminding people of that. But I feel like, and the more people I talk to, that answer is yes. Like, if you are a scholarship player, you're getting something, and the number's probably bigger than I thought. Like, I would say 40 or 50.
I would say most guys are not getting anything substantial, but a lot of guys get something at a bare minimum. So if they do blow up, they already have the relationship, with the collective. Now, maybe that's like $5 grand a year or something like that.
They already that low.
They already get the cost of attendance as well, right? So like maybe the number being quoted is rolled up. Now, some schools do the sort of basic income type thing, right? Which I think is mismanagement of funds, because the bottom like 25 players on your roster are very fungible from a pure like roster value perspective. And I think that is not I want to pay up for the premium guys. And if you are a guy who's never going to play for me and you're going to raise some problems because you're not getting money, see ya. Hit the portal. Like, it exists for a reason. I'm trying to win ball games here. So I would say most kids at most big schools get something. Some schools are pretty open about how everybody gets something. And Texas Tech did the kind of UBI deal. But I wonder, NC State was doing that. And I think they're not doing that anymore. I'm not saying that they're not like that. I don't think there's anybody there who's getting zero, but I don't think it's like everybody gets the same spread out. Like that's where I think is really going to go away.
I had heard that it was at least mentioned among people who are like with that NIL group that they were wondering mid-season if it was a mistake. I do not know if they have changed their approach, but that when the team is facing some adversity and the coaches, switching out quarterbacks and players are getting hurt and a couple transfer portal guys haven't panned out, that, does it send the right message to your locker room that guys can just be like, oh, I mean, like the season sucks, so the season's lost, but I'm getting paid. Like it's, I don't know what their policy is moving forward. I cannot confirm or deny, but I do remember that there was at least, it was mentioned that as they're moving forward, it would be something to explore. So they listen, whether it's Pack of Wolves, Savage Wolves, they do a great job of establishing relationships within the Raleigh community. They got some power players there. They're going to look at NC State's transfer portal class, where it's not, sitting there with Caleb Downs. It's not sitting there with Caden Proctor, but they've addressed some needs. I think they're going to be in a good shape in the ACC. But I think the universal basic income approach could face some challenges if your team faces adversity. And, where's that kick in the pants from there? I don't know. And maybe, do I sound old with that?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you sound like an old man. Just,
what happened? What happened?
Yeah, what happened to hard work and determination and giving a crap about yourself? I just want to point out, I haven't said a word in this entire segment about Ohio State simply because I want to see what Ohio State fans say about them today.
Oh, that's right. They were kind of coming at you. All right.
I want to know if we get credit for the downloads for the fake shows that happen in people's heads, because that'd be cool.
Stuff that we didn't say that is coming up. All right. So we had Will from Spire on the Cover 3 podcast. So, Bud, I'll let you sort of take the lead on this. For those, if we were to just go NIL for dummies, what is some of the basics of how NIL works? And let's be practical about it while also acknowledging the realities, right? Because there is, we're going to give you this much a month, but then there's the NCAA that's like, well, what are the deals for it? And how do how does the collective put that all together? NIL for dummies. How do these kids get paid?
So, all right. In theory, NIL is name, image, and likeness. So it's supposed to, in theory, correlate with what your sort of fame and marketing value is. In practice, they really set up NIL, they being the schools and the NCAA, so that the schools wouldn't have to pay the players anything, right? They're like, okay, don't really care how it works a whole lot as long as we don't have to be the ones funding it. So we can stick it on the fans who care about winning a lot of ball games. And a lot of programs have fans who do care about winning a lot of ball games. Now, as far as NIL, if you're doing a deal with just a brand, then it just looks like a standard marketing or advertising agreement. If you're doing a deal with a collective, a lot of times what they'll do is do it as a marketing advance, right? So they're paying you for the entirety of your NIL rights over some period, basically your marketing and branding rights. And then they'll go and they'll shop that out. So you kind of agree to a deal with XYZ collective. You're making X amount per month. Maybe you get a little signing bonus with that. Maybe there's some other bonuses that are timed at certain times in the year within that deal. That might also be timed to like maybe a week after the transfer portal window closes.
Interesting.
And there may be some some future advance type stuff that you have to pay back if you happen to leave the school. You may be signing over your NIL rights for a certain number of years, which does have some complications if you're going to transfer somewhere. So it's not a buyout, but it's kind of a pseudo buyout. And I think some guys probably have to pay those back to certain to different schools if they do leave. But ultimately, I think for the really big guys, not like a Shador or a Travis Hunter, who are like legit celebrity guys, like probably not a Caleb Williams, but like for your guys who are celebrities within the huge college ball fan space because everybody knows how good they are, but they're not like get stopped in a grocery store in a major city type thing.
Cam Ward.
Correct. Cam Ward, Walter Nolan, Caleb Downs. Okay. Like the average person on the street doesn't know what Caleb Downs' face looks like. We all know he's a stud. Those guys, I think for the most part, are signing like marketing deals with the collective, which think of it as like a marketing agency, and they're getting marketing advances on it. And then the collective goes and farms out to whomever who wants to work with them.
And when the NCAA comes around, it's on the collective to be able to have some paperwork to say that these marketing deals are not just payments, which functionally they are.
Correct. And in reality, I would think that every collective is kind of working with the recruiting department. And it's like, all right, here's our budget. Like we took a question on this last show or a couple shows ago. Do you think that these payments will closely resemble positional value.
Oh yeah.
Like the NFL. And yeah, I think they do, right? It's like, how much do you want to spend on the quarterback room? We had this with Oklahoma. We had this with Kansas State, right? If you got a young stud coming up, can you afford to pay both? Does it make sense? From a marketing standpoint, of course it makes sense. From a roster management standpoint, not really. So that's basically how that works.
We had a good question. You Cover 3 Tailgate, as soon as the link goes live, if you want to come in and drop questions, especially as we're waiting for the show to start. So, Kyle, what does an NIL contract look like? But I think you did a good with that. Here we go. There are rumors that Walter Nolan had a buyout, that Ole Miss had to pay A&M because he left early. Feels like message board BS, but is that even possible? And how do you enforce that?
It's certainly possible. Now, how do you enforce it if they're like, hey, you owe us this, and the kid's like, sue me for it? Do you want to be the first school to really sue a kid? It doesn't look good, right? Of course, you could do it once he's off to the NFL if you want to. But no, you could absolutely put it in there. A penalty for breaking the contract, signing with a different agency. Yeah.
What goes into a bidding war?
So your agent's basically shopping you around.
Yeah.
You know, hey, like he really likes this school. He needs this amount. This
Is he talking to the coaches? So coaches are talking to agent?
I think for the most part, it's not directly with the coach. You know, it's probably.
I think there's still some kind of old school bagman kind of separation anxiety type stuff going where the coach doesn't want to be directly involved.
Correct. Yeah. Right. That's. You're probably talking to the two different collectives. Hey, this marketing agency collective is giving me this, and this one wants to give me this. And they might be like, well, state tax there is this, and it is a pain for your mom to fly all the way out there. And they did go like 4-8 this year. So, like, you sure you want to go out like to wherever you're going. But it's just like any kind of, if you're somebody who is a marketable person, in like any of us, right? If our deal was up, hey, I'm talking to whomever, right? Like, and trying to see who give you the best offer, basically.
CNN Sports.
Dude.
I think the dirty little secret, and this is why agents have had an absolute field day, and they're like pigs in slop right now, is NFL contracts, the collectively bargained, what an agent can take. It's 3%.
Yeah.
But with marketing deals, which is technically what NIL is, they can now majority, like I've done some marketing deals, it's 20%. What these agents are taking is they're raping these kids. 30%. Some you've heard 30% of the deals the agent is taking, which is highway robbery. Like, that is wrong. And I think that's one of the reasons that doesn't, like, I know coaches want regulation to help manage their rosters. Players need regulation to help them from getting robbed by these agents who are taking this much of their money. Even like a broadcast agent takes 10% and they'll negotiate down. You're talking about 17, 18, 19-year-old kids who don't really know how to negotiate that, and they're just happy to be paid. Oh, I'm getting paid? Sure. Send me the end money. Like, you just get the check. A lot of them don't realize how much they're getting taken advantage of right now.
In almost all instances, it's the first deal a kid signed. So it's always their first time, right? And Danny's right. They do get robbed, quite a bit by some guys out there. But I think word starts to get around a little bit. Like, hey, like this guy, pulled this kind of thing, and players talk. The industry will evolve, just as any industry does, right? But it's so new.
Back to the UBI comment. I am in favor of a collectively bargained, structured, salary style arrangement for players who are competing at the highest levels. We keep talking about getting there. We just don't know the mechanics of it, especially with the NCAA fighting at every single corner to be able to make sure that there's a big voice somewhere that says that they're not employees. So, as that continues to play out through the courts, I don't know when we will get to a collectively bargained future, but I would be in favor of it, especially for, allowing these players to have some protections and also preventing the donors from having to give. Because that's another thing. I mean, do we talk about donor fatigue much on here? Because I think that's another part of this that's really, really tough. Mm-hmm. I mean, y'all seen the Carolina fan who's been eating ramen for like 9 days in a row? he eats ramen for dinner every night, and then he donates to Carolina's NIL. And he started it after Mac Brown had that press conference.
Wow.
And I looked at his last update, and he was like, physically, don't feel well. Had some calf spasms, but emotionally and spiritually, I feel great. I love doing something for something bigger than me. But we can't have our donors eating ramen every night just so that you can protect your roster and be able to make a splash in the transfer portal.
But I hear you. I agree with you. I think the system is flawed, and it does put it's so weird that you have coaches making 10, 11 million bucks asking for more money to help pay their roster. It doesn't make any sense. But I don't know if we properly assess the crazy passion of college football fans.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've seen money raised to fire a coach. And I think losing is probably the biggest motivator. Like Ohio State, told you my Ben Hartsock story. He got an email. Hey, we need your help because Michigan just won a national championship. We can't let that happen. So your fans like, all right, let's go. We got to beat them. You know, same thing you see Texas A&M. We never thought in a million years Jimbo would be fired with the $76 million buyout. They find the money. You know, like, it's always there. I don't want it to have to be that. I hate the request, but I think sometimes we don't accurately, get a handle on just how crazy fans are. Like the guy that's eating ramen so he can donate to the NIL, program.
CJ Stroud, please give us 50,000 to 100,000, please, for the love of God. Michigan just won the national title. I do think
did.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I do think you touched on something there, though, Danny, that is just kind of funny to me and just reflective of the insanity of the way that this sport works, is that coaches are getting 10 million, but these collectives are sending you letters saying, can you just donate $50 to $100 to help out as a fan or an alumnus? It's like there are better ways to get the money, especially because as long as one school has a billionaire that's just going to throw a bunch of money at you anyway, it doesn't really matter how much you crowdsource from your fans, because there's always just one guy who can completely change everything anyway.
Myth Busters. Everybody tampers, right? Am I wrong on that? By the letter of the law.
Is that an REM song?
Everybody tampers.
Sometimes.
I mean, my assumption is that by the letter of the law for tampering, pretty much everybody could be found to have tampered. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so. I can't just say that every single staff tampers.
I don't know if UTEP is tampering.
Maybe Pitt doesn't, right? I mean, like Narduzzi came out pretty hard against USC, so maybe he really doesn't. Maybe the service academies don't tamper, right? Maybe like a Stanford or Vanderbilt, don't tamper. Like some of them were academic schools. Maybe Dabo doesn't tamper. I mean, like, there's no evidence that he does, right? Because
there is not.
But I think when you say everybody tampers, some member of every staff, I would say that's pretty safe. Even if
keeping
it's
the
like
relationship.
Exactly. I think it's a relationship. I think that's the difference. And I kind of alluded to this, I think, on Monday. I'm saying, like, normally, if you turned a coach down, he'd cuss you out and say, see you later, and you never talk to him again. Now, there's always like hey, it was great getting to know you. Let's stay in touch. And I think oftentimes the tampering is initiated by the player. Like, he might ask a coach, hey, did you watch my game? Like, they like the positive affirmation. They like it. So, yeah, I think it's more relationships. I think it's almost impossible to monitor, unless somebody gives them the screen grabs. And I'm actually okay with it. But now, if you had the initiation of, do you want to come, do you want to join us? Then I think that's where you cross the line. Or, hey, here's our collective guy. That's the tampering that I don't think you can have.
If you have an assistant coach requesting for all of the detailed information about your current NIL deal and then being able to solicit the connections to a counter proposal, then yeah, I would say that that's tampering. But by the letter of like communication between these massive staffs with all these coaches and all these personnel guys and all these different ways that you can talk, I feel like everyone does tamper. But you're right. There are certainly some coaches who would probably turn their focus elsewhere. And at least by the evidence suggested by transfer portal activity, you can point your fingers at a few others as well. All right. We want to do more Mythbusters? How about this? Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, you know we're going to open up that big old bag of mail. But we also want to hear from you. What myths do you want explored in future Myth Buster episodes of the Cover 3 podcast? Today we did a little bit of NIL. We can dive into the transfer portal on a deeper level. We can hit some of the coaching searches on a deeper level. Lots to be able to get to. So let us know what you want to hear. And again, come on back Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. We always are interacting with the Cover 3 tailgate. You get here early, you drop your question in. We'll hit it in the process of going through the big old bag of mail, where if you leave us a 5-star review and put your question in the review, we will hit it in a mailbag episode. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
If you think about it, agents are just professional tamperers.